Hello, welcome to this Tech Talk. I'm Kim Carmen, the marketing director for PugPig. You'll notice when you log in here now that this session is being recorded. In terms of Zoom functionality, which I'm sure you're all aware of, we've got the chat box if you'd like to chat with any of us. But if you'd specifically like to direct us a question to the panelists or the speakers for Q&A, please do so in the Q&A function. We'd really appreciate it. For our PugPig customers on this call, thank you very much for working with us and for tuning in here today to hear about our latest platform updates. To our newer friends who have joined us here today, hello. PugPig is the digital publishing platform for the world's leading media brands. This year, we are so very, very, very pleased to say that we've been celebrating a decade of building hundreds of mobile apps, digital editions, and websites for the likes of newspapers, consumer magazines, B2B publications, and associations. This session today will be specifically on platform updates in 2021 and how they impact audiences and app engagement. We will be covering the latest announcements from the Worldwide Developer Conference for Apple's iOS, as well as Google's Android Developer Conference, and what they mean for you as publishers and your apps and your audiences. This session will also feature some interactive polls because we'd really love to get your feedback and we can incorporate that into how we think about our own product development so that we can best create products that suit your needs. I'm very pleased to be joined today by my colleagues, Harry Phillips, who is the head of product at PugPig, as well as Nick Helke, who's our head of native development. This is a team effort today, so collectively we will be covering this agenda. To start, we are going to look back for some context in order to look forward. So I'm going to give you some updates from 2020 and where they are now. We're going to be talking about privacy and ATT. We will talk about pricing capabilities in app, iOS 15 and what's next, a look at notifications and how they may potentially impact audience engagement. We'll also take a look at A/B testing within the App Store and give you a quick product update from PugPig, and then we will open the floor for questions for us as speakers, but we are always here to help you at PugPig. So I'm going to pass it over to Harry at this point.
Hello, everybody. A pleasure to chat to you on this Thursday. 2020, where are we now? iOS 14, fully supported by PugPig out of the gate, as always. And as always with iOS releases, pretty swiftly taken up by the global device base, up to 90% now, which it tends to stick about before the next one comes around. So yeah, nice and rolled out. It's been a pretty smooth one for us. The big things that came along with that, app tracking transparency, ATT. We'll talk more about this later, but suffice to say, this finally went live in April with iOS 14.5, as supported by us again on Publish and Bolt. Attribution tracking, which sort of went hand in hand with that via SK Ad Network, supported by us as well. And the App Store Connect Privacy nutrition labels, as they've come to be called, which is those, well, as you see on the right-hand side there, that little extra clarification of what apps are doing with your data, where it's going, what kinds of data they have. You'll have been filling those in as you released your apps over the last year. Kim, straight back to you, I believe. I think you're muted, Kim. You're still muted, Kim.
Yeah, so I wanted to briefly talk about the price increase consent modal. So we're going to do a deep dive into this later and have some discussion. But at this point, I wanted to ask our audience here about family sharing of subscriptions. So I am going to launch a poll that asks you, family sharing in apps. It has largely not been enabled by our PugPig clients to date. To check in, how do you feel about enabling the family sharing feature in app? If you could kindly respond, and then I'll share back the results of this survey to you all. Okay, let's get those last votes in. And now I'm going to end the poll. And to date, so the overwhelming response has been yes, we should enable sharing in-app purchases within families. A smaller majority saying no, and a swathe of folks saying I'm not quite sure. So let's now move on.
Other features, two interesting ones here, two big noisy announcements for iOS 14, app clips. Yeah, seemingly low uptake. I have yet to see one in the wild. I have yet to be told by anyone who has seen one in the wild. So it doesn't seem like they've been taken up by developers across the globe. Our view on it is there isn't a crystal clear use case for it, but we would love to hear your ideas. So if you do have an app clip dream that you're waiting to try out, come and talk to us. We would love to discuss it with you. Widgets, kind of similar, more of them, but not a lot more. I mean, I must have 200 apps on my phone, and I've got about 15 widget options that aren't Apple. We have gone ahead with an implementation of this, which we'll be rolling out relatively soon, which will allow you to present content which a user will be able to tap into and be taken into your app, which has a bunch of great use cases for things, especially like events or big news pieces you know are coming. The content app widgets that I have seen in the wild so far have generally been more visually focused, so picture of the day sort of type things, rather than here's a list of the 5 top stories, which I believe is probably partially due to the way the functionality behind widgets works, and maybe partially due to just people not being convinced it's a very effective use of their resources. So we're intrigued again to see where these ones go. And again, if you've got big dreams for widgets, please come and talk to us. Next slide.
Yeah.
Right. So that was last year. What happened this year? Overall, across both iOS and Android, they were smaller updates than usual. They didn't have as many features. The features they did have were largely superficial. So we're talking about things. Some of the features we won't touch on today, for example, is the ability to hear less or hear more on a FaceTime call and stuff like that. Things that are very clearly working from home and lockdown focused. Smaller updates, maybe a result of the pandemic. You'll have seen plenty of news in recent time about Apple being quite keen to get all their employees back into the office, for example, and you'd assume that's based in some way on their experiences of this year having their team working remotely. But a smaller iOS and a smaller Android is not necessarily a bad thing. It generally means that the release will be more stable, and it generally means there'll be more really under the hood stuff that makes things more performant, more stable, faster. And so that's always a good thing for anyone using our products or iOS or Android as a whole. And given the sort of now notorious good, bad cadence of iOS releases, and iOS 14 definitely being one of the less wonderful ones, there's high hopes for iOS 15 being a very nice and smooth rollout that makes everybody happy while not revolutionizing the platform. And it was always good to know iOS 15 dropping no devices this time. So everyone who could get iOS 14 can get iOS 15. In terms of features, the key focuses we're going to talk about today that pertain to you and pertain to us. Privacy, obviously such a huge topic that is being talked about time after time, and touched on by both iOS and Android. And digital well-being, again, continuing to be a trend, mainly this time in the form of notification control and stopping you being incessantly pestered. And then, of course, there are the elephants in the room, the things that Apple and Google are explicitly not talking about unless they are forced to in court, which is the mounting pressure to further reduce App Store commissions, that 30% cut, which is now, of course, for what should be for many of you, a 15% cut. I think Kim will touch on that a bit later, but do remember to sign up for those two programs if you apply to them, or sorry, if they apply to you. The big one, which would fundamentally reshape iOS, is the concept of multiple app stores. It's certainly not a 100% going to happen, done deal, but there's a lot of pressure from the EU, a lot of pressure from the US. What that even looks like is so hard to imagine on an iPhone, and how it will be implemented and whether users will be bothered is super unclear. So it's a fascinating thing to watch. Fortunately, no decisions for any of us to make at this point, but we'll be following that through the courts, and it will be huge if and when it does happen. And then the side note on that is side loading. Always been possible on Google Play, but again on iOS, the ability to just directly install an app from a file a friend shares with you would really reshape how the App Store in iOS works. So those are very interesting things that we won't hear about until, again, a court makes us. Privacy. So ATT, App Tracking Transparency, or for people who don't know what that is, this is the prompt when you open an app that says, allow this app to track your behavior across other platforms and websites. What that means on a slightly more technical level is the ability to have an IDFA, which is that single identifier that all users used to have on iOS, which can be used to track what you did across all sorts of places because it was the same identifier everywhere. iOS 14.5, required apps to decide whether to show that prompt or not and give users the choice to give them their IDFA. We've supported that out of the gate, as I said. And so any of you who have or are going to be submitting app updates since April have had to decide, should we opt in to IDFA or to ATT, or should we opt out of ATT? And almost exclusively, our customers have decided to opt out, which is to not show the prompt, to forego the IDFA. And that probably ties into the commercial models that a lot of you are using, which is that in our apps, you don't tend to do a lot of advertising, a lot of attribution tracking, a lot of stuff like that. It's more, as we've moved more towards subscribe membership models. Of course, that functionality is there. You are absolutely welcome to implement it and use it within our platform. But I think that's probably the main reason why most of you have decided just not to even ask. New things that are coming. There's the app privacy report, which is that screenshot on the right there. That shows a whole lot of data that, again, our customers aren't going to be that scared of. You guys don't tend to have a million tracking SDKs in the apps and things like that. It's mainly push and analytics. But basically that report shows you all of the domains that your app is sending data to, and any websites that the app opens inside of it, where they are. I would highlight just a small detail point, which is those of you who don't have vanity domains with us, which is a much nicer user-facing domain than the typical under the hood content.pugpig.com. Might want to set that up because it's going to start appearing in that report. But given that report is going to be hidden in the settings, it's unclear how much people are going to look at it and how much it's going to drive behavior change. Mail privacy protection, another acronym from Apple in iOS 15. This is what we've seen on sort of Hey email quite loudly and more subtly on Gmail, which is the death of the email tracking pixel and subsequently the death of the open rate being hastened by the fact that a lot of people use Apple's built-in mail app. Also means no more geolocation. Link tracking still works. The click-through rate is still going to remain a very valid metric for what's probably going to be your only valid metric for understanding the performance of your email marketing campaigns. That will be there for everyone using mail on iOS 15. And lastly, iCloud Plus, which is for any of you who are already paying for something like extra iCloud storage, you're now going to be on iCloud Plus. And that includes a new feature called Private Relay, which essentially just means an always-on VPN for your devices. But intriguingly, doesn't apply to apps. So apps will still be sending your actual IP address off to wherever, whereas any other kind of browsing will not. This is a dashboard. It's not our dashboard. This is AppsFlyer, their ATT dashboard. AppsFlyer being a pretty popular attribution platform, which we've implemented with in the past. And they sort of proactively came out with this dashboard. And it's been around the web quite a lot. It's been popular because Apple, in their usual way, have released no official numbers on ATT and how many people are using it and how many people are opting into it. The key numbers here are those in the top left, which is the ATT opt-in rate, which looks a lot higher than I think you or I were expecting, and most of sort of the literature was expecting. But there is a lot of subtlety hidden in that new formula asterisk up there. And notably, this doesn't include, for example, any users who have opted out at the system level. So there's that toggle in the tracking section of the settings, which allows you to just never even be asked. So for example, those people aren't represented there. So those numbers are higher than are probably true, but also probably higher than we thought they would be, which is interesting. And it'd be interesting to see where those numbers are a year from now.
So this is where I take over to talk about pricing capabilities in the app. So why am I talking about pricing today? Well, obviously the media landscape and consumer behavior has just changed dramatically in the last 18 months, 2 years now. Over time, we've generally sort of heard that single copy issue cover prices, so the price that you put on one cover of a traditional print magazine, they have generally been increasing throughout the pandemic. And as a result, that then changes the value of an overall subscription package. So the annual price of 12 issues or 52 issues. Specifically, in the last year, Apple and Google commission structures have changed. So this was mentioned before. Previously, Apple and Google were taking 30% commission cuts on renewals for existing subscribers. And for most publishers, this rate has been reduced now to 15%. So it's made digital subscriptions more profitable than previously. The other aspect of pricing, or why it's interesting to talk about it now, is that digital products have increasingly become differentiated from tree print products because of the implementation of additional features, specifically as well that we offer within PugPig. So integrating podcasts into your digital sort of magazine reading experience, the implementation of more video, virtual events, all of those things have fundamentally changed the value proposition behind digital products. And as a friendly reminder, price is one of the most important strategic levers that business leaders often use to grow their businesses. And in recognizing that, Apple last year introduced additional pricing capabilities on renewal in-app. So let's talk about them now. So you will all be familiar with the tiered structure of pricing matrix within the App Store, where you select a tier that new subscribers come in on at a particular price point. Then with those auto-renewing subscriptions, customers are alerted via email that their renewal has gone through. If you choose to increase prices for cohorts of users on specific price tiers over time, so basically increasing your prices for existing subscribers over time, those subscribers are prompted to give their consent again for the new price via email. So that is the long-standing functionality of how to increase prices for existing app users. It's done through the notification via email. Last year, it's also been done in-app. So users receive this prompt by default upon opening the app to also prompt them into these new higher subscription prices. The app prompt happens on launch, but it also happens, it's not instead of email, it's alongside the email. So if you look at that screenshot on the right, essentially users have two options. They can agree to the new price. And if they agree to that new price, their subscription is automatically renewing at that price and they have to go into settings in order to cancel it, or they can close the window. If they close the window, essentially they are not agreeing and their subscription is automatically canceled at the end of the term. So if they cancel or if they do not consent to the price increase, you can still message them in app via push notifications or in-app messaging to tell them about the benefits of your subscription price increase. You just have to do that before the term of their subscription is up. But the new change that Apple is now offering is, instead of just having this prompt only on opening the app and in one default place, we now have the opportunity to determine when this prompt is shown. So you can potentially ask subscribers to renew after they've been in the app for 5 minutes or perhaps consumed a certain amount of content. And to that end, actually, I'd like to throw some more audience questions out to you to understand how you view pricing in apps. We are going to ask you the following questions. Are you planning on increasing your subscription prices for existing app subscribers? And if so, would you want to change the price increase consent modal from being default on the launch to maybe thinking about a different point where that message should be shown in the subscriber kind of experience? I get very excited to see all these votes coming in. So I'll give you another a couple of seconds to kind of gather your thoughts about pricing and how you might want to communicate price renewal increases. I realize as a subscription marketer, often that price is really an important lever, but it also can be viewed as a risky one to play with as well. So I think we've got quite a bit of votes in. So I am going to end the poll momentarily and share back the results with you. So in asking, are you planning on increasing your subscription prices? The majority of you have said no. Okay, then, with a handful of people saying yes, and a swathe of people saying I'm not quite sure yet. There is the secondary question of, would you want to change the price increase consent modal from the default on launch to somewhere else? And yeah, overwhelmingly, there is a consensus that yes, you might want to try to change when that price appears outside of launch. So interesting. So we've got some work to do for you there potentially. And a swathe of people saying sort of, I'm not sure, and that perhaps you haven't changed your subscription pricing, so therefore you haven't really thought about it. So brilliant. Thanks for sharing your feedback with us. In the wisdom of showing Apple stuff, I also want to show you some Android stuff. So there is no analogous price increase consent capability in Android currently. However, one of the major announcements that Android or Google have made around pricing is really focusing on sub-dollar pricing. So they are increasing basically the amount of markets in which they allow kind of 10 cent, 20 cent subscription purchases. So they had previously announced a sort of swathe of 20 markets, and now they've just announced another 40, or in total 40 markets that can now offer sub-dollar pricing. So it's an interesting kind of like dichotomy between ways of increasing prices to offering new lower price tiers on Android. And again, there's source links on the bottom of these slides, which we will share out around at the end of the session if anyone wants to read or think a bit more about these things.
Cool, back to me. Notifications and focus. This is iOS. This is something that was spoken about quite a lot during WWDC, definitely with a focus on sort of digital well-being and being able to focus. So notifications, beloved notifications, now come in 4 flavors of priority, 3 of which are sort of available and relevant to you. The last one on this list, critical. That's sort of reserved for, oh no, there's about to be an earthquake, with the government telling you that. You need a special license to send those ones, etc., etc. So you probably don't need to worry about those unless you receive one. Passive, active, time sensitive are the new ones per se. So passive is a new sort of lower level of notification, sort of similar to provisional push notifications, in that they just slide straight into notification center, no noise or screen lighting up, etc. If you've got a focus on or do not disturb, for instance, they won't break through that. This is the sort of level we'd probably say is useful for people with very high frequency notifications. If you're sending a notification every 15, 30 minutes, you run the risk of annoying your users if you're making a big loud noise every time. So that's sort of a good use case for passive notifications. Active is the standard, the default. It's what all notifications work like now. It's also how they're going to continue to work until the push services add support for these new levels, which they may well do before iOS 15. We just haven't seen it yet. So this lights up the screen, and this is what we're all used to now. Time sensitive is another new one that is a tier up, and this is for stuff you need to know right now. So this is your delivery order is outside, or messaging will often use this. There's definitely a use case for this for really big breaking news that is, time sensitive, or potentially financial news where, time is the edge and things like that. But this will, for example, if a user has a focus on, which we'll talk about in a second, this would probably override the settings there. So do this enough, you will annoy your users. If you step through to the next slide, we'll talk more about focuses. So these are, put in one way, tailored levels of interruptibility. So some examples given were work or wind down. So for work, you might want to get your work Slack notifications coming through, but you might not want to get your Instagram notifications coming through. So it's giving you the ability to not be as big a hammer as do not disturb, which stops anything coming through, just allow the things you want to come through at this time. Wind down, for instance, you probably don't want your work Slacks to come through. And there's a whole nother level of configurability on top of this, where you could say, I only want my work Slacks from this guy to come through. So you can do it on a contact level as well. This ties deeply into those categories we just saw. So I think by default, time sensitive notifications, for example, will appear for all focuses. So if your user has got their wind down and they get a not that important push notification about some news, they might get annoyed. And users are super empowered to tone down or turn off notifications from apps that they don't feel are talking to them when they should be. And so this is going to be the game that you guys are going to be able to play this year, which is getting enough users to see your notifications, but not too much or at the wrong time, because you might get then hammered down and then they're never going to see notifications ever again. And it's very hard to get back into a user's notifications. So yeah, the way this will work will be in your push services. So Firebase, Airship for two big examples that we work with. There will just be literally a new setting on your messages which says how important is this, and you could choose from that drop-down list. And then just another part of it is that notification summary on the right-hand side there. Not 100% sure how often this thing appears. It definitely appears at the end of a focus period, for example, and it sort of shows you a curated selection of the notifications you've received. And this, as you can see, is much more tailored to content pushes than it is to breaking news or messaging pushes. It's much more for new edition or sort of soft feature work. And this is all Siri powered and machine learning powered. So this will reward apps that you engage with more at this time of day, for example, and also that most people engage with more at this time of day and stuff like that. So it will essentially reward good push strategy. App Store Connect, the dashboard we all love, is getting a bit of tender love and care from Apple this year in terms of things that marketers will love. A/B testing of your product pages, the words, the pictures, the icons. You'll be able to have multiple versions of that, and there'll be a nice new dashboard in App Store Connect, which will allow you to see which perform better and push that one out to more of your users. So that's quite a fun way to really work on those product pages, which until now are pretty much static. And then there's custom product pages, which is building sort of even more on top of that. So a page like that you can see on the right there, you can have up to 35 different ones, each with its own unique URL. And then so the idea is that you tailor this product page to a specific use case or a group of users, and then you expose them to that URL rather than just driving them to the same default App Store page for everybody. Ties a lot into acquisition marketing, of course. So if you're targeting your ads in quite a specific way, you might want quite a specific product page for those people. And again, you'll get really nice metrics in App Store Connect showing you which ones are working and allowing you to tweak and tailor and keep moving on with that. So that's quite a fun new feature. And in-app events are also a new concept. You'll see one there in the middle of that product page. Use cases for this could 100% be something like an in-app, sort of like a tortoise thinking or something, or even potentially a big new edition. it would be, they're pretty broad in what they can be. They are, again, shareable stories that are designed to be shared around, be advertised, and then draw users back into the product page and into that install. Android, again, also a pretty small year. Feels slightly bigger because there was a big visual overhaul. Material Design is no more, and Material You is now. Material You, big features, draws colors out of your wallpaper and colors different parts of the UI with those colors. A bunch of new animations. Most things are just bigger in general, so the tiles are bigger, etc., etc. Interesting one in that Material Design itself was often quite inconsistently used, and it all gets filtered through the layer of the manufacturer's own versions of the OS. So it's an intriguing one. It's be interesting to watch how this filters down through those devices and then starts filtering down into third-party apps. It's something we'll 100% be watching, and then decide how we want to work with Material You. Privacy, Google also having a bit of ATT fun. This is slightly different though. It gets turned on in December, but it's just the toggle in settings. It's not a big in-your-face prompt every time you open an app that says, hey, do you want to be tracked? So arguably we'll get less uptake, but it's there. New privacy dashboard, that thing you can see there, which largely displays pretty much just displays permissions. So who's looking at your location, how often, how regularly, when, same with camera and microphone and stuff like that. It's just designed to give users more visibility of permissions. Again, the way our platforms are structured and the way you guys use them means you are very rarely asking for permissions you don't need. So shouldn't be too stressful on that front. But this dashboard does empower you to go and turn off individual apps permission by permission. So you can sort of just make sure no one's has access to what they don't need access to. On the technical front, all the things that you love not having to worry about, we worry about it for you. Android App Bundle, which is the underlying technology that literally is what an app is. For forever, it's been the APK, the app package, and it's now become the Android App Bundle. All this really means is that install size is going to go down anywhere from 10 to 30%. We're adding support for that in the next few weeks. And as always, the minimum targeted version of the OS has been raised, and we are now following Google's recommendation, and our minimum targeted version, not available version, is Android 10, API version 29. So what does this look like for the next few months? We would call this a pretty low risk year. We've done the initial do our apps build and open and run, and they do. The expected release dates are obviously not well stated, but we're expecting them to be the same as they pretty much always are. So iOS 15 with the new phones in mid to late September, and Android 12 September, October. But again, that sort of dragged out rollout going through each of the manufacturers bit by bit. As always, we will conduct our full test passes once the betas are a bit more mature. So late July, early August, we'll start running those passes. And we don't think, as usual, there's nothing you'll actually have to do. Of course, now when you submit apps, you have to have that nutrition label, which most of you have done since they went live. You have to make the ATT decision, but those are things you do once, and they only come up as and when you update. They're not anything proactive you need to do. And as always, our CS team will be in touch with you about things you do need to do. And then, shameless plug, PugPig recent product updates. Just a few things that we're working on that you might be interested in. We've redesigned our audio experience. This is in PugPig Bolt. We are working quite closely with a few customers to just sort of really build out that, make it very visually appealing, quite customizable, work with a whole bunch of audio use cases, right down from, I mean, you could pretty much run a pure audio app on PugPig Bolt right now, where you can also just have audio versions of your articles for people to listen to. So really flexible, very good looking addition to our platform, rolling out very soon. Paywall metering, we've added that, so users can have access to a certain number of articles before we hit them with that paywall. Again, configurable by you. It's not a fixed number. You can change it to your leisure. And there's a few ways that we're building that out in the coming weeks and months, like resets, maybe tying it into some smarter third-party service, et cetera. And lastly is our sort of biggish product, which is our biggest project, which is updating to everyone to PugPig Bolt, which will mean that you'll have one app with our PugPig Bolt Live Edition functionality, but also the edition and storefront functionality you've come to love on PugPig Publish.
Brilliant. Harry, we just got a question coming in saying, perhaps worth clarifying, is audio update only for Bolt?
Well, that ties into that latter point. So yes, so PugPig Publish and Bolt have been drawing closer and closer together over the past few years, really. And so the decision has been made that PugPig Bolt will be the one going forward, and we are building out all of our PugPig Publish functionality inside Bolt. And so in time, everyone will get updated to Bolt, and everyone will get all of those 6 new features while still having all of the things they love on Publish. And that's the big thing we're working on, and we'll have plenty more to share on that quite soon.
Absolutely. So at this point, we would like to turn over to you, our audience. So are there any more questions for any of us here about iOS, Android, what's coming, how PugPig can help you? Please feel free to shoot them in the Q&A or the chat. I'll give it 4 more minutes, but if there aren't any more questions at the moment, the best way to get in touch with us here at PugPig is to email us at support@pugpig.com. We're more than happy to answer any specific questions that you might have for your apps, your audience, and how we can help you. This session will, obviously, I had mentioned earlier, was recorded, so I'll similarly follow up with an email and sharing the slide deck to our audience today. Thank you so much for joining. Actually, although I do see one question that has popped up, which is...
I can take that. The question is, are there any plans to integrate OpenID APIs into the apps? I'm not entirely sure what is meant by OpenID APIs, but we do actually already support OpenID Connect authentication. So yeah, any OIDC compliant authorization and authentication service works with our platform. So social sign in with Apple, they all work.
Fantastic. And we've got another, oh great, now the questions are coming in. We're interested in gating features. Is this something that you're considering? For example, a user must log in to add articles to their favorites or wish list.
I can take this one because I discussed it no more than about 90 minutes ago. Yes, on the roadmap for discussion, no firm dates, firm plans at this time, but favoriting, wish listing is 100% one of those things that we've seen be gated behind subscriptions. So this is 100% something we are considering. Yeah.
All right, any more for any more? No. Okay, then. So as mentioned, if you do kind of come away from the session and think, oh, I really should have asked that. Oh, here we go. What are the features to consider when building a mobile app?
Shall we take that, or you, Kim?
Well, I get started. So, well, from my very biased marketing perspective, I say that the features to consider were really tailored to your audience, what their needs are, and what they're looking to get out of your app. But perhaps from a product feature, you would be best to elaborate, Harry.
Features to consider when building a mobile app. It ties into a bunch of things. It ties into your content strategy. So you're really going to want to have focus on features like notifications if you've got really regular breaking content that you want to bring people into. If you've got sort of membership stuff, that's a huge feature set there, right? Which ties into metered payables, which ties into OpenIDC Connect. It ties into a whole rich number of things. If you flip the other way, advertising, I mean, it depends on so many things, but it's taking your content strategy, it's taking your commercial strategy, and it's finding the right collection of features there. And I mean, I think we've come across pretty much every combination by now. So we'd love it if you had a new one for us. But I think, yeah, we've got a pretty good set of features there that can match any combination. And I can see Paula's as well. Paula, I never make promises on timelines, but I can tell you that I'm discussing it next Thursday. That is as close as I will give you. But yeah, it's an interesting feature. I knew you'd say that. Yeah, I'd be a bold product manager to promise a timeline on a call with 50 people. But I appreciate you for trying.
Last call. Anyone to get in again under the gun? Okay then. So again, if you've got any more, we're always here to help at support@pugpig.com. And again, just sincerely want to thank everyone for participating today and joining us. And we very much look forward to continuing to work with you and continuing to develop our products in conjunction with you and your needs and your audiences. So again, thanks so much. And we'll be sharing the deck and being in touch real soon. So thanks everyone. I'm going to end the session.